Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your breath to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel is still in spin. There's no telling who that it's naming, for the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changin'. Hey, Danny Faragher here with Facing the Music, where the conversation about music never ends. And speaking about conversations, I was just sitting here with my daughter, my lovely daughter Dina, and we were talking about Bob Dylan. She suggested that we turn the camera on and record this, so I said, sure, let's go ahead. So we were talking about Bob Dylan.
So why was Dylan such a big influence on you musically?
Well, a myriad of reasons. One was that I was just so taken by his voice. It was so present. It was just, stand and deliver, man, and keep your arms wide of January, it was just, it was like this hillbilly prophet, that's how it sounded to me. And his content, for one reason, it was highly poetic to my ears, and I loved what he did with words. What a great wordsmith! And the other was that it roused me to. It activated me, and
why were those lyrics so particularly meaningful?
It's sort of a call for. Well, I think of Americans to stand up and get involved and do what's right, and I think that there is a morality. I think that the right thing was that the civil rights movement should succeed at that time. That the Vietnam War perhaps was not the wisest decision.
Well, and when was that? Peppermint Trolley came out when? 68?
Well, yeah, the Peppermint Trolley Company was 68, but I had a band in 65, in the early 60s. It was called the Mark V. And so it was the summer of 1965, and I had just graduated from high school. And Bob Dylan had just hit the AM airwaves and crossed over with a song called Like a Rolling Stone. You ever heard that song?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was so different from anything. It just bursts out of the chute. Once upon a time you dressed so fine, through the bumps of time in your prime, didn't you? People call, say, beware doll, you're bound to fall, you thought they were all kidding you. I mean, there was just nothing like it. People call, say, beware doll, you're bound to fall, you thought they were all kidding you. So this song, Like a Rolling Stone, even though it was a little bit different than a lot of the other Dylan things in that it was very pop oriented, it was kind of a revenge song, and there'd been revenge songs before, like say Hound Dog. You ain't nothing but a hound dog is a revenge song, or After You've Gone, you're gonna be sorry, that kind of a thing. So you obviously know that he must have had that relationship with this girl that he's singing about. But the imagery is so wonderful. I mean, it's so great metaphors in Diplomat that carried on his shoulder a Siamese cat, Princess on the Steeple, and all the pretty people. They're all drinking, thinking that they got it made. But you better take a diamond ring. You better pawn it, babe. It's like Napoleon in rags. All these things that are very poetic that hadn't been in pop songs, in either the Tin Pan Alley songs or the rock and roll songs, you know. So it floored me. It just, and I went out and bought the record, and
but you also said that it was about much more than the music, right?
yeah. Well, when I listened to The Times They Are Changing, my older brother Johnny had bought the album The Times They Are Changing, and he had that bedroom. Do you remember at Grandma and Grandpa's house, in the Victorian big old house,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Lincoln room,
The Lincoln room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was my older brother's bedroom at the time, and I would go in there. He was working a summer job. I was in a band, so I was. I thought I don't have to work. I would go in there in the hot. We had no air conditioning, so it was really hot. Must have been like 105 degrees or something. But I'd be sweating and listening to this "Times They Are Changing" album over and over again. And it was probably one of the last albums that he did where it was very topical, where we would take news subjects and deal with it. But you know, there was a song in there called "Only a Pawn in Their Game," and it's about the guy who assassinated Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers was a civil rights worker, organizer, and he was assassinated. And I had heard that stuff, and I thought, oh, that's terrible. But I guess because I was young, I was able to just kind of, I was able to compartmentalize that. When I heard him singing about this, and it's about the guy that he's only a pawn in their game. These Southern politicians, they play the poor whites against the blacks. You know, you're better than them. You were born with white skin, and I had to cry when I first heard that song. And listening to that album, and there's another one about the Ballad of Poor Hattie Carroll, who was a food service person that was working in Baltimore, and some rich young white guy didn't like her attitude, and he killed her with a cane that he carried on his diamond ring finger. And this is all done in this, you know, kind of a folk ballady style. And I thought, you know, I can't ignore this stuff that's going on. You know, it was kind of like a call to get vitalized, to deal with the world. I felt so almost ashamed that I'd been such a callow young thing, you know. And so... Well,
didn't you participate in some marches as a result?
Yes, I did. I have to say that listening to that summer, listening to Dylan just changed my life. Going into that room, the Lincoln room, was a religious experience for me. And yes, and I did participate in a lot of peace marches and so forth. Yeah, and that was a real wake-up call too.
Anything in particular stand out about any of those marches?
Well, I was in the march, it's the Century City March in 1967. It was a week after the Monterey Pop Festival, where I had been, and all the vibes were so great. And this was like a police riot. We were attacked by the police. Must have been 150,000 strong, but they bottlenecked us on an overpass and just started wailing on people.
Wow.
You know, and at that time I was still very naive, and I'd never seen anything like that, and that was a real learning experience. But didn't stop me. It made me want to keep putting on my marching shoes. You know?
Made you more angry, right?
It made me more angry.
Yeah.
But I have to credit Bob Dylan. Later, Dylan would go into more surrealistic kind of lyrics and symbolic things, and all kinds of. I mean, he's done so many different kinds of things. But that particular album really motivated me. I think of Dylan. I kind of think of him almost like a Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman sort of reinvented himself. That's the great American dream, is to reinvent oneself, you know. And Walt Whitman became America's poet. And I think that Robert Zimmerman from Hibbing, Minnesota, becoming Bob Dylan was just carrying out that American theme of reinvention and creativity.
Right.
So.
Well, how did becoming more civically aware affect you as an artist?
I didn't want to just write about, you know, bubblegum type stuff. Although I did do a lot of that stuff too, because it was the biz, you know.
Right.
But always striving, and recognizing, you know, like for example Marvin Gaye's album. To me, that was another experience that was like that, and that's another album that holds up. But it also motivated me in that lately I've been getting back into the pen and picking up the pen and writing poetry. And poetry, writing a poem is a means of me to interface with the world, with what's going on around me, just trying to process. And it brings a little bit of order. It's like I think Robert Frost said once that in a confusing world, his poems in his mind were little piles of order, of clarity, you know.
Yeah.
So yes, and I plan to write many more poems.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hear another verse of this great song.
All right.
The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and this first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your stories.